Or what did you expect with what Netanyahu is doing? As though Jews in London or in Manchester are somehow to blame for this.
Exactly. That's exactly my point as well. Jews in London aren't responsible for what Israel is doing in the Middle East, except Israel is tying itself to every Jew on the face of the planet.
I'm as real as a real can get. What you see?
Buongiorno freaks and geeks, welcome back to the channel. So the Channel 4 YouTube channel decided to release a video with a very provocative thumbnail saying, "Are Jews safe in Britain?" I mean, is that a serious question? This is not the Middle Ages anymore. It's a 40-minute video, so we're going to look at a segment of it and maybe it will shine some light on what exactly makes British Jews a marginalised demographic that needs to be airlifted out of the UK. But before I press play on the video, please don't forget to hit the buttons for like, subscribe, and tell me down in the comments, are we going to start seeing citizens lose the right to protest, freedom of speech, hell, freedom to even walk in areas designated as Jewish going forward?
Are British Jews safe? What should be done about it? Should we start looking at things like the right to protest? Hadley, can you just begin by telling me about, how you feel? What are the mix of feelings you have now? Because we're seeing, a lot of anger on the streets, but also people talking about fear.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you?
Well, my main feeling is much smaller than that. I'm sorry to say. I'm worried whether it's safe to take my children to Hebrew school on Saturday. They go to the local synagogue where we go. And, our lovely local synagogue has really increased its security since October the 7th, and especially since the beginning of the Iranian war. But 2 synagogues near us in the past 2 weeks have been firebombed. And we're seeing these terrorist attacks in our area of Northwest London just stepping up. And so I'm afraid my feeling is just the very personal one. Is it safe to take the children to Hebrew school?
Okay, so a lot to unpack in those opening statements there. First of all, feelings don't usually translate into real life things happening. Like, you can feel really unsafe. Doesn't mean the threat of crime is any higher. Secondly, of course, firebombing is a disgusting act, but it doesn't always mean terrorism. It can also mean a hate crime due to the religion of the victim. Thirdly, this person writes for the Times, so you need to take that into consideration whenever she is expressing any personal belief. The Times is not known for its left-wing and fluffy output.
And do you feel it is markedly more dangerous now as a result of these 2 or 3 most recent incidents than it has been over the last 2.5 years?
Yes, because there's this strange thing, which is whenever an anti-Semitic violent attack happens, rather than engendering support for the Jewish community, it just seems to encourage more anti-Semitic attacks.
Again, what do you mean by that? Because it seems that any incident that is labelled anti-Semitic is automatically seen as a terrorist attack, and the national government of this country leaps into Cobra mode, saying, oh, we need to increase the terrorist threat level. So please dive into that comment a bit more for me.
So they just become this almost, I don't want to say Ponzi scheme, but just kind of pyramid scheme of that they just keep happening. And that's what we've seen in the past 6 weeks, particularly since the burning of the Hatzola ambulances just 10 minutes from my house, just more and more anti-Semitic attacks.
Yeah, but you were using the words terrorism like just a minute ago. Also, what happened to those ambulances? Because they were replaced straight away. Have we heard anything more? Have suspects been apprehended? It seems like that happened and it just fell off the top of the news agenda cliff. And now we've got another incident which is given national prominence, and we will get to that incident in a moment, but there is no Ponzi scheme. Even individuals like Jeremy Corbyn, whenever there is attack of whatever size against the Jewish community, Jeremy Corbyn is the first one to go onto his Twitter page and send support. So who are you referring to? Because it can't be people on the left.
I mean, when you say rather than support for the Jewish community, there is also support for the Jewish community, isn't there?
There is some support for the Jewish community, but I can't help but think that if pretty much any other minority was on the receiving end of the kind of attacks that the Jewish community has been on the receiving end of, there would be marches in the street. There would be, huge outcries from the normally very vocal anti-racism campaigners.
Yeah, of course there would be if the government wasn't already doing everything in its power to try and find the culprits and bring them to justice. That's what people need to understand about marches, especially the marches happening right now. They only exist because the UK government is on the side of the oppressors. That's quite an easy circle to square.
And instead, there's something much more muted. There's something more, but Israel, or but Zionism, or but it's complicated.
But it's complicated. Now we get into the complicated bit. Do you remember when Zionists, whenever you try to bring up the situation happening in historic Palestine, they would always rebuke you or rebut you with, oh, it's very complicated. Before October the 7th, 2023, you could say, oh, Israel's clearly an apartheid state, and they would rebut you with, but it's complicated. You don't know what's actually happening on the ground. Even the support when an attack happens against people of the Jewish faith happens or it doesn't. And you've admitted that the support has been there, but now you're saying it's been caveated with questions around Zionism. And I have massive questions around Zionism, and maybe I'll get to them in this video. But yeah, you shouldn't be really bringing it up as a defense or using it as, oh, you're accusing me of being a Zionist. You should not want to be a Zionist at all, to be honest. Or
what did you expect with what Netanyahu is doing? As though Jews in London or in Manchester are somehow to blame for this.
Exactly. That's exactly my point as well. Jews in London aren't responsible for what Israel is doing in the Middle East, except Israel is tying itself to every Jew on the face of the planet. And actually, when those ambulances were set ablaze and reporters from Al Jazeera UK went to actually go and report on it because, they're journalists and they don't automatically attach the Jews in London to the Israeli state, they were hounded out of there.
And this is a very historic reaction. I don't like going to World War II analogies, but when you look back 80 years ago, when a German diplomat was killed by a Jew in Paris, that the Nazis then used that to attack the Jews in Germany in Kristallnacht. And here we see when Israel does things far away that people here disagree with, they see that as justification for an arson attack on a synagogue in London. It's like the story doesn't really change that much.
And when Hamas and other fighters broke out of their open-air prison and attacked Israel took that as a sign to absolutely flatten Gaza. So, yeah, we can empathize with what you're saying.
Do you think it is fair to shout, Jew harmer at Keir Starmer today?
And I don't particularly think that. And what I would say to people who go after Starmer, yes, he's made his mistakes. I personally disagree with the fact that so much anti-Semitic rhetoric has been allowed to flourish in the streets at these pro-Palestine marches.
What's your evidence? Show me your evidence of anti-Semitic behavior or language happening at pro-Palestinian marches. And again, you call them pro-Palestinian, they're really anti-genocide marches. So I'd love to see that evidence and not isolated incidents.
But, I look at Starmer and I think, you know what? There are a lot of worse alternatives. And he is there and he is trying. He does go to a synagogue with his wife. I don't think he is ignorant of the problems and the fear the Jewish community is feeling.
What a lot of people are saying is it's time for action, not words. What does that mean to you?
Well, first of all, I'd like there to be an acknowledgement that there has been this terrifying anti-Semitic rhetoric in the streets at these pro-Palestine marches. Things like globalize the Intifada, eradicate Zionism. These are not political statements. This is hate speech.
Yeah, that's just a dumb thing to say. Zionism is a political ideology, and I would encourage everyone to go and get the book Zionism Decoded in 101 Quotes by Yaakov Rapkin. A wonderful breakdown of how Zionism has nothing to do with Judaism and is a political project aimed at colonizing the Middle East.
And people can criticize Israel all they want. Jews always say that. It is not anti-Semitic to criticize Israel. But to demonize Israel and Zionism as uniquely evil, as the source of all evil in the world.
No one said that Israel and Zionism is uniquely evil. It's just one of the many evils that we have right now.
That is when it tips into anti-Semitism. And that is when you see mentally ill people, like what happened in Golders Green, globbing onto that and attacking Jews.
Right, but is this primarily then a question of police enforcement of the existing law?
Well, yes, I would like more police enforcement. There probably does need to be more police on the streets, although I don't want to turn Golders Green into some strange ghetto.
What do you mean by that?
There also needs to be some closer examination of this strange satellite group that seems to have spun off from the IRGC that is taking credit for a lot of these anti-Semitic attacks.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with this satellite group. I would need to look more into it. But again, what's that got to do with, well, first of all, the police doing their job? And with the person who has been apprehended for this attack in Golders Green, that person was severely mentally ill, like only coming out of a secure hospital not that long ago. Like, if you want a solution to it, we should have better mental health provision in this country right now. But obviously it's been gutted. How about we speak about that?
No one really knows who they are. This has started since February.
Or whether it's real. I mean, it may just be people taking, credit for something that they have nothing to do with.
Thank you. Like, I was wondering when a good point was going to be made by Krishnan Guru-Murthy, and that was it. Yeah, I don't think the guest was very happy at even a suggestion or even a pushback on that, but it had to be said.
That may be, but there's no doubt there are disaffected men, Muslim men, that this group is taking credit for their actions. And there's a lot of disaffected men around there who would like an excuse to go after Jews.
How does she know they're Muslim? Like, what do you mean Muslim? Like, how do you know? You don't know anything about them. There's just people on the internet taking credit, and you've just that was a bit icky. Just sliding in Muslim men in there for no reason. As if it's only men of the Muslim faith that have an issue with what Israel's doing in the Middle East right now or over the last 60 years. Like, that was weird.
What about the marches themselves, though? Because, I spoke to the independent reviewer of terrorism legislation, Jonathan Hall, and I was a little surprised, I have to admit, to find this reviewer of legislation saying the marches themselves need to be halted for now. I mean, do you think that too?
No. Like, how can you just halt marches? Like, what do the marches have to do with what is... And how does that make... Like, if you stop the marches, that means that people will stop seeing the violence happen in the Middle East. That's just such a weird solution to what you have deemed a problem when it's not. Not even allowed to march anymore. Godly. Welcome to Keir Starmer's Britain, everyone.
Well, I'm pro the right to protest, and freedom of speech always works in favor of Jews. But there has been a massive escalation of anti-Semitic rhetoric at those marches. Can we stop those marches? I don't really know. But certainly the police need to be more aggressive at stepping in when they see this anti-Semitic rhetoric, when there is this globalize the intifada. This is what globalizing the intifada looks like. Yeah. Attacking Jews on the street and burning synagogues.
No, wait, that's not it. So allow the marches, but enforce the law.
Also, I don't know if you understand what globalized intifada really is. It doesn't mean attack Jews. Like, come on, that's a weird correlation that you've made there. But yeah, she obviously prefixed that whole little spiel with, I believe in the right to march, I believe in the freedom of speech, but when police hear anti-Semitic, again, what exactly is anti-Semitic about globalized intifada? It's not like the marches that we saw happen in America with those idiots, those Nazis with their red hats and little torches saying Jews will not replace us. This is completely different what's happening in the UK. But you want the police to be on alert and just arrest anyone who they have deemed anti-Semitic. Okay, I don't know how they'll be able to do that. And I really hope that you're not the arbiter of what is anti-Semitic, but okay.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't see how you can stop the marches. I think that's a quite slippery slope. But yes, enforce the law. And also for politicians to speak more vocally, labor politicians in particular, that there is a war going on. You know, there are two sides here. It's the idea that Israel is more evil, more uniquely evil than Hamas, Hezbollah, the Islamic regime is just obscene, and that is anti-Semitism, and that causes more anti-Semitism.
That's, again, what are you even talking about? I don't think anyone's saying that Hamas, Hezbollah, or the Iranian government hasn't done anything evil. They're just saying that Israel and Zionism have done more evil stuff. Like in my books, committing a genocide in Gaza is one of the top 3 evil things you could ever do. But maybe that's just my standards. I mean, golly. And what other Labour politicians do you want to be speaking on this? Because every Labour politician that I've seen so far has been firmly on the side of Israel and absolutely condemn anything to do with Iran. So what Labour politicians are you looking for to voice these opinions? It's like, name them at this point, because there's only a handful that you could be referring to.
What is it that you see in the language that says Israel is uniquely evil? I mean, because lots of people criticize the war, they criticize the Israeli military's behavior, they criticize Netanyahu. Which bits of language do you think denotes a feeling that Israel is uniquely evil?
Well, the entire focus on Israel, certainly from the, so-called anti-racist left.
Damn, could you be any more vague? You just said, oh, just everything to do with Israel. Everything you just mentioned, Christian. That's what. Anything. It's not even funny, but like, what we did here?
I never see any criticism of the other sides, of the various other sides there are. The fact that, immediately after October 7th, there were protests against Israel in this country before Israel had even acted.
Yeah, and guess what they went and did? They went and did a genocide. What do you mean? So you're saying if those protests in the UK, if they didn't happen right after October 7th, Israel wouldn't have committed a genocide? Nah, what are we doing? What are we doing here?
The fact that, it's no longer, people don't just say, but Israel to me, they say, but Zionism. The belief that Jews have a right to a homeland in itself. The fact that Israel is now described regularly in newspapers as a colonialist enterprise.
It is all of those things. It is a colonial enterprise. And again, I would recommend you go and read in Zionism Decoded in 101 quotes. It lays out the whole Israel story step by step. So spare me, please. And again, I will highlight, this is a Times reporter. So not only Zionists, not only right wing, but evidently a dishonest person as well. I don't know if I needed to say that last bit.
As genocidal as this, is that, without any reference to October the 7th, without any reference to the fact that it is under constant terrorist attack.
Wait, you just justifying genocide because of October 7th? I don't know if that's a good thing to do. That's all I'm going to say. I don't know if you can justify a genocide by referencing an attack.
From all the countries that surround it. I am not pro-Netanyahu. I've always written against Netanyahu's policies.
Let me give you a clap. What does that mean? Netanyahu is not the problem. Netanyahu is a symptom of what Israel and Zionism is. That is it.
But now I see it's something more than criticizing Netanyahu, which is criticizing of Israel's existence in itself.
I mean, what did you think at the beginning, after October the 7th, in terms of where this would go? I mean, did you expect there to be anti-Semitic attacks? I mean, there was sort of an inevitability, wasn't there? October the 7th happened. You knew there was going to be an Israeli invasion of Gaza.
It wasn't an invasion. It was a flattening. What do you mean an invasion? It's only recently they decided to put troops on the ground. But other than that, it was drone strike, missile strike. It was every other strike. They didn't want boots on the ground. What do you mean an invasion? Like, yeah, that's a weird way to frame it.
And the kickback here as well, because that's the way it always is. Anti-Semitic attacks always rise when Israel is at war in Gaza or in the West Bank.
Yeah, but Israel doesn't really go to war in the West Bank like it does in Gaza because, again, they have so many settlers there that they don't want to accidentally kill as well. But that whole framing, Gaza does something, Israel reacts, anti-Semitic attacks increase here in the UK, but that's a complete distortion of the sequence of events. Israel is a settler colonial state. You have a right under international law to defend yourself if you are occupied. That's where it starts. You're an occupied people. Anything after that is a choice being made on the side of Israel. So yeah, that's again just weird distortion. Like doing the propaganda on behalf of this Times reporter for no reason, because she can clearly do her own propaganda for herself.
Yes. I didn't expect so many people who I know or who I respect to be so one-sided in their view. My view is that it's a tragedy on both sides and that civilians are being killed on both sides.
And you're saying there's some type of balance in the casualties? Aye.
What I didn't expect was people to justify October the 7th. What I didn't expect was there to be a protest against Israel the day after October 7th in New York.
But you just justified Israel's genocidal behavior by mentioning October 7th. But people aren't allowed to justify October 7th. Make it make sense.
City with the largest Jewish population outside of Israel. I didn't expect there to be such anti-Semitic demonstrations on October the 8th, 2023 in Sydney and in Brighton. People were already so outraged at the idea of Israelis, Jews being victims, that they immediately had to demonize them. And I feel like that is what is happening now. What I see in Golders Green, I see people, not just anonymous bots, but online high-profile progressive people
Show me.
slightly defending or distancing themselves from what is happening because they still just have to believe that Israel is so uniquely evil that this is all inevitable.
Or that the person who has been apprehended is seriously mentally ill. Have we thought about that, maybe?
Without naming anybody, can you just give me an example? What do you mean?
Yes. There was a high-profile historian on social media yesterday who's described this as inevitable blowback for Israel's genocide. I mean, would they say this if Muslims were being killed in the street after, something Hamas had done or Hezbollah had done? I don't believe they would.
Yeah, but we've seen Muslims being killed, like little boys in the United States being murdered because of some conflation with Hamas. So, yeah.
I also don't believe that people understand what it's like to live in this country as a Jew. There are 4 to 5 security guards outside my synagogue. That, when my children go to Hebrew school, they have to get their bags checked. Is there any equivalent to that outside other religious institutions in this country? I don't think so.
And has your synagogue been attacked?
No, it hasn't, but they've had to step up the security around it because 2 synagogues 10 minutes away have been attacked.
Again, I don't automatically see that as a sign of marginalization. Just think for a moment back to apartheid South Africa. All of the Afrikaans had security around the very nice palatial places they occupied, just like how in the West Bank, the settlers are protected by military personnel. Would you accuse them of being the marginalized grouping in this area? I don't believe children should be having their bags checked for explosives whenever they go anywhere. Children, I hate that children are collateral damage in all of these conflicts.
That's recently, isn't it? But I mean,
Yeah,
security at synagogues has been high for quite some time, hasn't it?
Well, we usually had 1 or 2, and now it's regularly 4 or 5. And the Telegraph reported earlier this week that there was a man outside a local Jewish primary school that I also know who was taking photos and shouting anti-Semitic abuse at the Jewish children inside.
Yeah, that guy needs to be dealt with by the police. Like, what is happening here? Like, that is an issue for the police. Why is this guy no one agrees with that. Who do you think is going to defend an idiot's right to stand outside of a Jewish school and shout abuse at children and take photos? That's a sicko.
It's definitely stepped up. But yes, it's also damning that synagogues have always had to have this kind of security.
What is your view of those Jews who march against the war in Gaza, who are very critical of Israel, the people in Jewish Voice for Labour, who are very critical of all the, the action within the Labour Party? Do you think, what do you think of them?
Well, I think they're free to protest whatever they wish. But if they are only marching against Israel and not Hamas and not Hezbollah and not the Islamic regime, then there is a different term for them, which is just useful idiots.
Why do they need to march against them? Every single superpower in the world is already against them. What would marching against them do? Again, I think this person has the wrong idea about what marches are for. Marches are to highlight and bring awareness to where marginalized communities are affected and our government is doing nothing to protect them. What? Useful idiots, yeah. The Jews I don't agree with are useful idiots. Nice one.
There's evil on both sides. It's not one side is all good and one side is all bad.
There are also people who say that the Jews, I would say, who would say that violence and threats against the Jewish community is not unique, and that there are other, Muslim community also faces increases in anti-Muslim attacks. Do you think that's a sort of a a false equivalence or wrong in some
I
way?
would say I don't know of any other minority group when they talk about the hate crimes and the violent attacks they get, that the response is, well, there's also this other group. I mean, I only hear that in regards to Jews.
Are you sure? I mean, is that just what you're listening to, or?
I don't know. I mean, you tell me, Krishnan. I mean, when I hear about a minority group that is under attack, someone that I'm not part of it, I don't then respond by saying, well, there's also this group.
Yeah, I would have to go and check her work. But I know if Black people, for example, are still under institutional discrimination and racism, I often hear the response, but oh, that's not true. Like we've seen reports come out in the UK that they're saying that the UK is not institutionally racist. Are we sure? We're just flat out told no. So yeah, I would encourage this person to go and speak to more people outside of her bubble. I
mean, I suppose what I mean is, I think a lot of Muslims, for example, would say nobody listens to us when we say we're under attack, or they say it's our own fault, or it's because of terrorism, or it's because of Al Qaeda, or ISIS, or the history of violence. So there's a similarity in some of the argument,
and that is tragic. But
she doesn't care. It's tragic, but I don't care, really. Like, I was just saying that everyone else should look outside of their bubble, but I'm not going to do that because I'm built different.
One recent study found that while there's heightened, there are historic levels of anti-Semitic attacks in this country, Islamophobia or attacks on Muslims are more likely to result in the person being charged, whereas anti-Semitic attacks, that's less likely.
Yeah, like that's because the nature of the attacks against those two religious groups is quite different. So I looked at the statistics, and I think when it comes to attacks on Jews, it's more like criminal damage, arson, when people aren't around to be caught or apprehended. Whereas I think, it's more assault on people of the Muslim faith. So you have to look at why the arrest rates are different.
The fact is, even aside from all that, anti-Semitic hate crimes are at a historic high. There shouldn't need to be hemming and hawing about it and who's got it worse. To use an old phrase, it's not the victim Olympics.
It's oppression Olympics, actually.
But the fact is, a man was putting on his yarmulke while waiting for the bus and got stabbed. I mean, I don't really know what else I can say.
Yeah, and the person who did it was mentally ill. And guess what? He was apprehended and arrested, and he will most definitely, he's been charged and he's already appeared in court. I will also say the footage of him being apprehended is absolutely disgusting. He had been tased, and the police officers in question still felt it was within their power to kick him in the head multiple times. The only reason a police officer would do that to a person that's already on the floor being tasered is because you don't see them as a human being. It was absolutely disgusting footage.
Do you hear conversations amongst people at the synagogue and other friends about people considering leaving Britain and going to Israel?
Yeah. If you're considering leaving Britain, things are never going to be that bad where you're going to pick up and go to Israel, a country that's just committed genocide against Gaza and is in an active war with not only Iran, but also Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. What? Nah.
Yes, I mean, some people do say that. I'm not going to say that. Yes, of course. And this fear that we are such a small community in this country, only 280,000, less than 0.5% of the population. And most of us are in Northwest London, and that is the area that is under attack. It just feels very scary.
Yeah, I guess that also highlights how people shouldn't be concentrated in one single area, whether that's a spot in North London or a spot in the Middle East. That's just, yeah, that's not a great idea in my view anyway.
I mean, I've met people in Israel who have moved from Britain recently. Do you know people who have left because of fear?
No, I don't know that. And also, I understand why people would want to go to a country where there's a bigger Jewish population, but I don't really understand why you'd want to go to a country that constantly has rockets fired into it from neighboring enemies.
Neighboring enemies. What? Like, I just love how Israel is always put in a victim position where they are the most heavily funded country in the Middle East by the greatest superpower on the face of the planet, the United States. Whatever Israel wants, it gets. Not because Israel has any control of the United States, but because Israel is an amazing satellite state for the United States in the Middle East. So yeah, that's also like they kind of made enemies of their neighbors. You can't go around sending rockets into every neighboring country and think, why are you not my friends? It's like that kid at school that pinches and punches all of his schoolmates and says, why don't you like me? Why are you not my friends? It's like super weird, super duper weird. So that was that segment. I don't think I'm going to watch the rest of this forecast because I'll be here all night. But it's again, it's the conversation is not that complicated in my view. We have to be clear. The person who stabbed those two Jewish people was severely mentally ill. He was referred to Prevent, and I'm going to go out on a limb that case was closed because they found out he was severely mentally ill. Like, how can you re-educate someone who is completely and utterly mentally ill? Secondly, Israel attaches itself to every single Jewish person on the face of the planet. Thirdly, police just have to do their jobs, like just apprehend and charge suspects. I do think the marches should definitely continue because they do not pose a risk to Jews in London.
First of all, if you're thinking about keeping Jewish people safe, which should be a priority, the focus should be on the policing that is going to do that. Cancelling other people's right to protest isn't going to keep a single person safe. The marches are not a threat to Jewish people. There's not been a single arrest for any violence towards any Jewish people.
Something that is not mentioned that often, Jews are not an oppressed minority anymore in this country or America. I don't know how else to tell you. There's no places where they face institutional racism. But yeah, what do you think? Tell me down below in the comments. This is a much longer video than I usually do, but yeah, we have to look at this stuff. This stuff is very important, and it is dictating not only international policy but domestic policy right now. And with this type of focus, nothing else is being done. No other policies are being looked upon at the moment. All we're seeing is anti-Semitic attack, terrorism, Keir Starmer, Peter Mandelson, Epstein files. It's those 5 things that are on rotation right now in the British media, and I would like to, I don't know, break that cycle and focus on other things. So if you stayed with me up to this point, thank you so much. I don't know how you were able to do it. I was flagging towards the end of that. If you enjoy audiobooks, I voice one on spotting red flags in relationships, link in the description below. Remember, once we understand politics, we will make better choices. If you've enjoyed the video, please don't forget to hit the buttons for like, subscribe, and I will see you very, very soon. Ciao.
Well, laughing, I started a joke, which started the whole world. I started to cry, which started the whole world. I finally died, which started the whole world living. Oh, if I'd only seen that the joke was on me.